Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, which Craig Touch, myself, Roland Fume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today we have a very special guest who we're delighted to talk to, Ali Horriyat, who is an author, the founder of Compassiviste, and also formerly a very, very, very successful businessman who gave it all up to come and focus on his particular purpose and what impact he wants to make on the world. So it's a huge pleasure to have you, Ali. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And it's lovely to be here. Thank you for hosting this.
Oh, well, it is my pleasure. And I think I got your intro right. I think everything that I said is accurate.
It is accurate. I used to be in the finance world, and yes, I was pretty successful there. I wanted to make a change in my life, so yeah, I gave away over $100 million, and here we are, a new leaf.
Absolutely, and we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks for joining us, Ali. I know the time difference makes it a bit late where you are, but we appreciate you coming and joining us. So I want to talk to you about Compassiviste, and I know that it has a lot of different arms to it, but given our the people that listen to this podcast are mainly authors and publishers, we want to sort of focus on that side of it. But why don't you tell us about the company as a whole, and then we can sort of focus in after that.
Sure thing. Compassiviste started after years of quitting my old life and taking a break, traveling a lot for about 4 years before Compassiviste came to me as an idea. And I believe to make change in this world, to make the necessary changes, we need to start from a compassionate perspective. And we need to act on that compassion, because just feeling compassion is insufficient, I believe. And so I put this word together, Compassiviste, which is compassion and activism together. And to me, activism doesn't mean going out and placards and standing and yelling at world leaders and G7 and stuff, but it actually means taking action that makes the difference in your life. And if we do this individually in a collective setting, then we have change. And that's where it all started. And I thought, where does expression really come from to start this compassionate change? And it comes from the arts. Expression is a form of art. So we touch on the artistic manners in which people can make those changes. So writing is a very powerful form. I mean, you think about the Communist Manifesto as a book, as a piece of literature. I mean, it's a very small book. And to have that kind of effect in the world, at that time that it was written, I don't know any other medium that could have had that kind of effect. You look at some scripture, the Quran, would it have that kind of effect in any other art medium? So every medium has its own power. And then you go into music, for example, and you think Live Aid, it brought poverty and famine to the front lines of everybody's understanding of, hey, we need to do something about this, from attending a concert and paintings and all forms of arts. So I created Compassiviste essentially to blend and merge these art forms into a space where everybody can join and everybody can participate and everybody can bring their own talent to the table and together build the society where we can make change through the arts like they used to be for the longest time in civilization. And I think the written word is very powerful. It's a way, to me, a book is taking your mind and putting it on a platter and serving it to another person. And when they read through that book, they're really going through your mind. They're going through your, thoughts, through the way you work. And so it's important to have that aspect as part of Compassiviste.
I love that. I've always said one of the most underrated things about reading is how intimate it is. It's like somebody described it as being able to meditate in the mind of the author. And it's like, as an author, you create this wonderful world and then it gets recreated in the world of the reader. And, there are authors who've been dead for a century and you can still get to walk through their mind and hear their voice in a way that is, it's very, very intimate.
I still live within a dead author's mind. Spinoza, a philosopher. Compassiviste is partly built on his, on his philosophy of oneness and attributes and extensions, where all the programs are just attributes and extensions of the oneness of the collective. And so it's partially built on that. And, whether it's philosophy or fiction, or whether it's storytelling, fairy tales, whatever it may be, you're absolutely right. We still live in those and through them.
Yeah, and I think that with writing over most mediums, it's the accessibility of it is what allows it to spread and to live on. Like with music, you kind of need something to record that music, or you have to have access to the live performance of that. With art, I mean, you can copy the art, but it's not an easy process, and you lose something in making it into a smaller thing that you can distribute, right? Whereas books, although we have so much, we talk a lot these days about digital ebooks and stuff. They're still in print, right? and especially all of these really, really great classics and philosophies and all that. So they started out in print, and they'll remain in print for forever. So anyone around the world can easily get access to those books, whereas some of the other stuff, it's still a little bit harder for people. So I think and a lot of that stuff other than books requires sometimes more interpretation, and it's not always as clearly laid out. With a book, you can really take your time to make your points and clarify, whereas a great piece of art that moves people and maybe changes something might be seen differently from person to person. So I think, really, the idea of writing for social change, it makes a lot of sense when you think about how widespread your work can get. So what do you do with your publishing arm in Compassiviste? So if an author, are you working with authors to try to help them, with the messages they want to get across, or are you simply open only to authors that have that sort of meaning? Tell us about that.
Okay, so first of all, Compassiviste Publishing is designed to spread the stories that are generally unheard. When you talk about storytelling today, there is the capitalist influence in the publishing industry that kind of suppresses a lot of the voices that we don't hear today, and a lot of the storytelling that we don't hear today. And the big five, or the leading publishing houses, they kind of control how the stories come out and what kind of stories come out. They're like the trendsetters. In fashion, you have the catwalk, and these guys have their own seasons and trend settings, and they command that. And so I think it's about time we come out and we say, these stories need to be heard, and these stories must be shared. And these are stories that will become important in the future, and we shouldn't let them die because we may not have a market for it today, or they may not generate the amount of wealth that we're expecting them to generate today. And so we do that first and foremost. And some of the titles we have and some of the authors we have brought on are exactly people like that as we start. And beyond that, it's also to allow people to share their movement and share their story. So you may have a reason to write, an activist reason to write, and you want to use that writing to raise awareness to your causes and to get people involved with your causes. And it's a place where people can do that, and we can support them through our charity arm, because Compassiviste Publishing is nonprofit. We take all of the profit on our end, and we basically repurpose it into the causes that are built through the publishing arm. And so imagine you're writing, you have a farm, and you're trying to, have a sustainable farm, and you're trying to write about regenerative farming and agriculture. and you put it out there, and you want to have a program to build on this, not just to have the book out. So the book will be purposed as a machine to kind of, as an instrument to allow people to be a part of what you're doing and bring more people into your community. So that's the second purpose. And the third purpose is to bring education to people through the publishing house, in the sense that we don't print. And that is on purpose, not strictly because of the illegal paper supply, but also because of the child labor and trafficking issues in publishing. A lot of books are bound in countries where there are lax laws for labor, and you find a lot of children, and this has been reported many times, where a lot of these books that we see in our bookstores in developed world come from places that they shouldn't. They come to us illegally, but we don't have the education to question those things as consumers. What we want to do is we want to raise that bar to tell people, fine, you're buying print books. Do you know where the paper came from? Do you know where this was bound? Do you know the supply chain of your product you're purchasing and what you're supporting? That's part of the conversation. And also to allow people to advance with technology. So right now, as much as we love paper books, I think it's about time we do what the music industry did and what the film industry did in turning digital. I mean, you have Spotify and Apple Music and these platforms right now, whereas you go back 20 years and those CDs and paper sleeves in those CDs and those cassettes and all these other ways. Today, the fraud and criminality of the music industry is much lower than in the days of the CDs and Napster and all these other ways of what there was. And so it's safer in a sense. And on top of it, we're talking about reduced emissions, definitely, going with the new format as opposed to the old. And also in film, you don't have Blockbuster anymore all over the place. Now you have Netflix. It's a lot more sustainable. And so for those reasons as well, we want to kind of get people to try to understand that it may be time for, especially adults, maybe not children's books. When you're talking about children who are like 3 to 7 years old, they still need to develop their motor skills. They still need to develop in certain ways that it may be worth still publishing paper books for children of that age. And we can do those sustainably, and we can make sure that we're not doing those where for one child to enjoy and learn and grow, another child has to suffer in some illegal child camp, putting those books together for the other child. So taking those things into consideration as parents when they go shopping, and to also start thinking about how we can repurpose all of our libraries and bookstores and all these places that are creating immense carbon emissions, and they're really deteriorating the world in a sense as being one of the leading causes of the climate change issue. So all of those things are educational aspects that we bring to the core transparently, while in explaining why we do the things we do.
Wow. It does surprise me though, because like I said, I this is just sort of my own belief, which could be wrong, but I feel like there's probably a lot of people that could use, a lot of these messages that don't have the access to digital at this point, right? Because there is that barrier to entry. You have to have the devices. And I imagine there are parts of the world where that sort of thing is really just not, it's more important for them to look for food, spend their money on food and stuff than getting an e-reader or a computer where, they can download the books. So it would be more accessible to them to have print books. And given sort of like your mission, it surprises me, although I do understand it from the sustainability and the exploitation part of it. So I guess it's a fine balance that you have to walk.
But this is for the developed world.
Okay.
So if you were to have a printing press in the parts of the world that you're talking about, and locally Because again, if you're talking about parts of the world that don't have access to these kind of digital technologies and don't have the money to think about this, and they're just thinking about getting food for the day, they probably don't also have postal codes. So they're not ordering their books from Amazon. So for those people, you would need to have a physical printing press in their locations. And if you were to present the paper in a sustainable manner to them, and the printing press is a sustainable printing press, and so is the ink and everything else, and it's delivering locally to those spaces to allow people to have books, then that is fair. But to try to do that across the United States and Canada and across the EU and the UK, it's not going to be a sustainable manner. And as you know, almost half of the books that are actually published, print published, they never get sold, they never get read. What is it? More than 80% of books have not even been, the cover doesn't even get opened. So the overconsumption that we have in that developed part of the world that causes all the problems for the part of the world that you're talking about, that's where we should emphasize this. I mean, we have ridiculous homelessness, for example, in LA. And many parts of the developed world. And, we have empty libraries that are being used less and less and less because people have access to the digital formats, or they have access to very competitive priced books. And they don't use the libraries anymore in this digital age that much. So can we repurpose that to housing, for example, that building? So these are questions that are different for the developed world and the developing world. And these are questions that hit differently for those two parts of the world. And then on top of that, you come to the storytelling aspect. And a lot of the people whose stories are not being told are exactly the people you were just describing, because we don't hear about them often. And what we're trying to do is to raise that storytelling and raise that so that we can become a collective, so that we can be a part of what they're going through as well, to make the changes that they need. And so there's a lot of good people in parts of the world trying to bring technology there, trying to help, trying to raise the bar in that way. And actually, it is a slight misconception about technology, because over 6.5 billion people have access to technology today globally. So to base the whole conversation on 1.5 billion people out of almost 9 billion people to this conversation, where over 85% of the publications are also distributed in the developed world, doesn't hold that much merit.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm just more thinking about sometimes the people that might need it the most are the hardest hit with a lot of these things. But yeah, I mean, if they have the access to it, then I agree that, I personally haven't read a physical book in a long time. I know a lot of people still, more older people, still love that, the feel of the book. And I get that. It's just the convenience to me of being able to have all the books in one device, but I'm in the position where that's sustainable. And libraries now too are moving in the digital direction. At least where I live, a lot of them allow you to borrow digital books as well, right? So you don't even have to buy them. And Amazon, has their the KU program, so people can get books for free. So I totally get all of that. Do you distribute your books through Amazon, and do you put them into KU, for example, so that you can? Yeah.
Yes, we do that, and we also are working on now distributing them through our own website for the purpose of bringing more tech into the storytelling. So Amazon is built on a distribution platform that's kind of archaic when you speak in technology sense. It's built decades ago. Decades ago is archaic in technology talk. Imagine you can have the storytelling more animated. Imagine you can have the storytelling with more art involved. Imagine you can have the book covers in a more inclusive manner. So, for example, I've written a book. It's called Capital Racism. Now, racism to an Irish person looks very different than racism to an African American, and it looks very different to a racism to a Brazilian person. How do you put a cover to that book by kind of showing the idea of racism. Do you put a Black person on the cover? Do you put an Irish person on the cover? It makes a very big difference to them inclusively, how they feel and how they interact with the book. What if you could choose your cover from a select group of covers? What if you could interact with the book? What if you could become a part of the storytelling? So these are things that we can do in the digital age we're in today. But we don't have access to it because we're still selling and manufacturing and publishing and putting books out in the traditional way that hasn't changed for about 200 years. Really, we just print faster. That's the only difference. The logistics is faster. So the tech of getting the book into your hands and getting you to pay is much quicker than 200 years ago. But everything else is identically the same, because why mess with something that works? But we're not bringing the art into it. We're just using the capitalism of it. So on our own platform, we're going to make available those digital, upgrades that can make the books more exciting for people to be involved in many different ways, many different facets, and to make it more inclusive to people. And then hopefully, this is all pioneering work. Hopefully in the future, it catches on and those tweaks and changes are made in the industry.
So it's a whole platform.
Yes, it's a whole platform. And we also have carbon labeling. So one of our arms is carbon labeling. So what we're going to do on our books is give you a transparent read of the carbon impact that you've had with this book. So you can turn around and then use that for your own offsetting, for your own understanding, for your own education, and show you the difference between if this was printed and delivered, what it would be, and versus how you're getting it here, how much more impact you've made. Now multiply that by your national average, and you get an understanding of what it means to walk into a bookstore. We're bringing a lot of things to the table together holistically.
I find it fascinating because a discussion that a lot of people are having right now is, are the days of publishing on Amazon over? There are lots of people getting into direct sales, and it seems like you're approaching exactly that. You're like, Amazon has its limitations. It's, the impact it makes, a lot of people try and boycott it and they can't because it's so influential. So you're creating you're not just giving opportunities to writers, but you're also giving a platform that improves everything behind it. I think that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's important to us because I'm not one. I really dislike, from my personal point of view, I really dislike fighting the old or fighting competition. I don't believe in competition. I believe in continuously developing. And here, what we're doing at Compassiviste Publishing, we're not fighting Amazon, or we're not saying, it's a bad system. We're just saying it did well for what it did. And, it got a lot of books in people's hands, and it really revived, the book industry. But now we're in a place where we need to expand on it. And Amazon has the power and the capacity and the minds sitting in their offices to make those changes. But again, when you think about it from a capitalist perspective, why do we need to do that, right? And they're only a marketplace. That's the other thing. That's why I'm not fighting them, really. They're just a marketplace. It's up to the publishers, the authors, to demand those things. The authors should say, hey, I want this kind of art in my book. I want this kind of difference in my book. I want my book to be more interactive. And the publisher should find avenues to make this happen for the author when they work together, as opposed to trying to contract the author to see how they can profit from this book. So
when somebody publishes a book like that from in your platform, so how would the reader be able to consume it? If do you have a specific reader that you've developed that would allow for all of the interactive elements that you're talking about?
So we've designed it in a way, and we're testing different platforms now. Now, if you were reading it, for example, on your iPad or on an iOS device, it would be perfect. There'll be no issues. Now, comes in, again, because the tech is not developed, because the demand wasn't there. You go to Kindle, and it doesn't have the colors. It doesn't have all of the things, because people were using those to kind of read books on vacations, and what was important was the sun glare and things like that, and they were just reading books that were just words. And so all of a sudden, a new thing pops up, a new art comes into the market. And I'm pretty sure those corporations and those places will have to start updating their systems. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, it doesn't work with Kindle, maybe I shouldn't do it. No, I'm going to go ahead with my art, and I'm going to let Kindle catch up. I'm not going to worry whether it goes on every platform, because if I have to do that, and if every artist has to do that, we're not going to grow as an expressionist, art-based civilization. I mean, we're humans, we express, we flow through art. And so if I have to sit there and say, well, we haven't developed this tech yet, so I can't really do the creativity that I want, it becomes an issue. Leonardo da Vinci was in that position when he put the helicopter in one of his notepads. You know, he drew it out, he designed it, and he had it in there about 500 years before it was made. But it didn't stop him. He didn't say, oh, I don't have the fuel, I don't know how the engine works, I don't know any of those things. Like, no, this is my art, I'm going to put it out there, and one day, hopefully, somebody's going to be able to build it. And lo and behold, 500 years later, we built it. So it may be that, you know, you can read the book on tablets or on smartphones today, and you may not be able to read it on your e-reader, the traditional e-readers, but hopefully the traditional e-readers will start noticing that they're not getting that much sales, because people have to transition, because more artists and more writers are willing to test new art ways of presenting their books, and so they will update.
Right, and I mean, I'm not saying that that they shouldn't do those things. My question is more around what would they use to read these? Like, you're saying that they could read them on an iPad. So does that mean that you have an app that they use, or are you talking about like what format is the book in that allows? Is it just? Are you only talking about adding, you know, color graphics, or are you talking about more interactivity that isn't allowed right now?
So more interactivity that isn't available now, but also in certain books that don't require the interactivity. So certain books, like I said, it's just a matter of how you want to present your cover to readers, or how you want the color coordination of the book to be. And these are things that are available right now in print. I mean, you know, when you look at Harry Potter series, they're sold with different graphics and covers and colors in New York than they are in, for example, Argentina. And it's because, you know, they study the market and what is preferred, and they kind of make the books, they design the books for different markets in different ways. We do this with a lot of products today. So part of it is that. But I think if we're moving into the digital direction, it's going to be a lot more sustainable to be able to switch, you know, the art and the cover and the colors on the fly on a digital file than it is to say, okay, if you really like the orange and the blue versus the green and the purple, then you got to go buy the book that's in the Europe market and ship it to yourself in LA.
Yeah,
so
I guess
that's a part of it. And then the other part is, you know, going to your question, the file. Well, in those files, it could be PDF, it could be anything. But in the new version, then yes, you will be downloading the ACT app, which is our own app by Compassiviste, which has these different sections where the Compassiviste publishing section would be under as well. And then you go down there and you select a book that you know, will be on that format, which will have the interactive processes and whatnot. You can also get the book without. So you can say, okay, I don't want all that fancy stuff, I just want the traditional version of the book. That's fine. Go to Amazon or go to our website and download it from there. And you can have the static version, and you can read on your e-reader if you want. So we're giving you the options, but we're doing the new as well.
Right, and I think that works, like in the sense that if the demand for that is there, if people find value in that, and it becomes popular enough, more people will want to do it. And then, yes, people like Amazon will absolutely try to catch up, because that you know, makes sense for them in terms of profit, right? But I was just more thinking about how those people, as long as you have, I mean, the ability to have it in both formats makes it even better, because then you can sell it in and get that mass market. And then that can even bring awareness to the fact to people that don't realize that they can see that, oh, there's another format of this book that is interactive, and then they'll go and they'll look at that, and that will sort of feed into that. So what happens if an artist, an author comes to you, you have an app that allows various types of different interactivity. And so obviously to use it, they would have to use something within that realm. But if they say, oh, I have this other idea, that isn't supported by your app, do you then say, oh, and then work with them and build it into the app so that they can have that kind of interactivity as well?
Of course. I mean, the idea is to test the limits of art all the time and grow.
Right.
That is the concept. So I'm hoping exactly for that. I'm hoping for an author to come to me and not say, I like what you've designed, I'm going to use it, but to come to me and say, I like what you've designed. It's inspired something in me that says grow. And I've come up with something that's the next level, Ali. And I'll say, lovely, bring it on. Let's build the next level and let's just keep growing. And really, that's the kind of art and storytelling we're looking for as well. We're looking for things that push the envelope all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that because it allows, nobody is constrained by what is out there, even though they don't, they don't have the reach to build their own app. They don't have the knowledge to build their own app. So they can work with you when your team, you have that. That's not something you can do with Amazon. I can't go to Amazon and say, hey,
exactly.
Kindle doesn't support this new idea they have. And they'll say like, okay, I don't care. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Not my problem. So yeah, it's awesome that you're building that out with the artists and able to sort of grow that way. I love that idea.
And we work, like you said, with the artist as opposed to the artist working for us. So, anybody who's been through traditional publishing, and especially on their first book or anything like that, they understand how you kind of, it's not your say anymore. When they publish you, they own the rights, they own the final say. They will consult with you on the cover, on editing, on many other things. But then at the end of the day, it is the publisher's say how this book comes out and, what happens and whatnot. I went through that. Essentially, the backstory to Compassiviste Publishing is my own publishing story. So I have about, I think, 18 books out now. And I'd written about 8 to 9 books. A couple of them were poetry. And I had a friend of mine who was in the publishing world. And she just happened to be there one day and was just looking through, my writing. I think I was getting ready or something, and she was bored and she was looking through it and she's like, hey, this is pretty good. And I said, oh, is it? And I wasn't really thinking of publishing at that point. And she's like, yeah, it's really good, I like it. And I said, okay. She's like, do you mind if I show this to someone? And I said, no, sure. And so a few months went by, I thought nothing of it, they probably didn't like it, whatever. And so I get an email a little while later saying, this really huge publishing house wants to speak with you. And I said, oh, wow. Okay. So I got excited. And then they said, we love the books. We love the ideas. They need some work. I said, okay. I was okay with everything because I was kind of, starstruck by these people approaching me. And so I said, okay. And then came the legal talk. The contract, and you really don't own the books anymore. You're nobody after this. And then a lot of the books talk about what I'm doing at Compassiviste, the whole sustainability issue and everything else. And within this was a package for marketing where I had to hop on a plane, city to city around the US, promote the book at different bookstores, at different talks, at different places like that. And it was horrible because, and then I had talked about the whole, let's do this strictly ebooks and audiobooks so that we can send that message out about, the crime issues of print publishing and whatnot. And they completely disregard, like it didn't even make it to the discussion table for them. And it was print is how it's going to be and all of that. And I saw myself getting chopped up, at this table and all my ideas just thrown out. And eventually I had the guts to say no. And this was after I had given away all my money and everything. And I was literally in poverty. And when I say in poverty, I've actually spent almost 2 months on the streets. So it's not when I say poverty that I went to my uncle's house and I sat there, but I didn't have money. No, I've slept on train stations before. And so this was during that kind of right at the end of that. So it wasn't that I had $20 million in the bank and I said no. And this was a hefty contract because it was for 8 of the books as a series. And I said no based on principle. And then I thought to myself, how many people can say no? some people have kids, they have families themselves. They can't just, not every author who wants to hold on to their dream of what the book should be can say no and starve and expect the book to come out. They kind of have to sell at some point and make that deal. And so I thought, I'm going to build this publishing house so that no author ever has to give up the rights to their book, because it's their art. It shouldn't be mine. I shouldn't own it. They shouldn't have to make changes that they're not comfortable with or they don't want to. It's their message. It's their story. I shouldn't tell them how to say the story. Yeah, of course, I will tell them, you spelled this word incorrectly. We need to change it. And I'm sure they'll agree to that. But I can't say, I don't like your opinion on this. We should change it because here's a big contract. So those are things we really took into account at Compassiviste Publishing when we put it as part of Compassiviste. So our contracts are you keep your right as a writer. It's all yours. We don't take it. We just distribute it. We just share in the profits. And basically, when we make sales, all our profits goes into the cause. If you as an author have a cause, it will go directly into the cause that we're supporting you with through Compassiviste Foundation. If you don't have a cause, but you care about something, we'll discuss that. Say, my heart's in with the animal rights stuff. Great. We have an animal rights cause at Compassiviste Foundation. We'll dump the money in there and you can advocate for that through your growth and your marketing and whatnot. So it's all about bringing that human interconnectivity together again outside of the business of publishing books.
And that's very different to how Amazon does it with, like, if you're part of KDP, you have to be exclusive to Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are selling your book at a certain price, you can't sell it at a lower price anywhere else, or Amazon. Yeah. So you've given up a lot of control that Amazon is used to have its monopoly.
Yes, and that's what happens, right? You monopolize at that point. And when you monopolize, that's why now Amazon controls, the book sales world. I mean, it's way over 95%, the book sales, global book sales right now being coming from Amazon. So, what can you do about that? I think there's nothing any law can do about it. There's nothing any individual person can do about it. But when we have these conversations like we're doing right now openly, I think if people want change, then they have to join a collective that says no. So if there is a collective of authors that are substantial, and you get some of the bigger names with really big reach to come on board and say, we stand by this, and we stand by giving the artistic freedoms and the artistic rights back to the people who came up with them, not to the people who can afford to buy those arts, then it changes the way that arts are presented. That's how it used to be 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 700 years ago. Books were written then too. It's not a new concept.
Absolutely. I think that change comes about slowly, but it does come about, right? And it's all about, somebody has to make that first move, take the steps, and then if it's something that resonates with people, then that's how it starts moving. It's that pebble or the snowball rolling down the hill, becoming the big boulder at the end. And I think that what you're building here, especially the idea of it being a whole platform and not this one narrowly focused. And of course, we're only talking about sort of that one narrow focus, but you've built a much bigger platform that can sort of go out and affect social change. How big at this point is your reach in terms of sort of who you work with and who's sort of consuming it?
So next year in September, we're launching the world's first Compassion Convention. So it's going to be a convention, kind of like an expo, but it's not only going to have stalls with compassion-minded people involved. They could be, corporations like, for example, Patagonia, bringing sustainability and compassion into the world of clothing and fashion. It could be charities, but we're also doing, from the other arms of our arts, book reading and contest, and a film fest where it'll be just like any other film fest, but purposed to social impact films that are going to be shown there and supported, and a music fest, kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember Live Aid, where the concert was purposed to something valuable to humanity. It wasn't purposed to profit. It was purposed to a cause. And a lot of big bands came to that concert, and they were really vying for stage time because they wanted to be part of something historic and good. And, the famine in Ethiopia, and through these kind of, Heal the World, Michael Jackson's, through these kind of movements, essentially, changes were made. So we're focusing the music, the arts, the speaking panel, many different variations of our arts, the paintings, everything, to that convention to really touch people on a physical level, not just, from a distance on a digital platform. Though we are very digitally motivated, I think it's important to bring that human interaction, face-to-face value together. So that is going to be the great kind of igniter, the activator to our movement. Having the awards, having people really resonate with what we're doing. Right now, we have an anthology at Compassiviste where we're going on to our third one. So we had our first one about peace building, and we had our second one about mental health, and we had people from all over the world write into the anthology. All the proceeds went to our charitable causes. So there was no profit to the anthology. It was just people donating their good work to us, and us really taking that donation, which was in words instead of dollars, turning it into dollars. That's the transition of good energy, and putting it towards the causes that we're supporting and towards the ways that we can help the world. And so we're aiming for this to really expand dramatically through those things. Now, in the interim, from here to that, where we're putting all our eggs in one basket through the convention, and how we want to do that annually in different cities around the world, we are working with certain universities, and we're working with our own education platform. So our education platform is a holistic platform of all the education that we don't get in schools. And what we aim to do with our accreditation and our system is to allow a person to take our certificate, go into the workforce, and know that their employer already understands that a Compassiviste education means that this person is going to make decisions that are based more in emotional intelligence than profit-seeking or profit-maximizing intelligence. So it brings in that concept of the caring human, the compassionate human into the workplace as well. And I think a lot of corporations are looking for that kind of leadership today because, corporations are not essentially evil. It's just that the demand has been the way it's been for the longest time. So they just respond to the demand. Nestle gives you plastic water bottle, not because they're evil and they want the world to end. They're humans too. They have families as well. They do it because we demand that. So when the supply side and the demand side come together through this education, they can make those changes that we need made. And so the education platform also will hold a lot of our books in there to our population in the education platform, which we're projecting when we launch to begin at about just over 2 million subscribers from our pre-subscriptions and all those kind of things, and the beta that we're testing out and all of that. And right now we have about just, I think, under 25,000 people strong Compassiviste community that are kind of distributed around the world in the different places that we have our kind of embassies of Compassiviste. And but I think the growth is going to happen through the convention, through people really being able in droves to come and experience what we present.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Where is that convention going to be held?
The first one is going to be held in Las Vegas. And then from there, we're going to have a kind of a voting system on our app, which we use for a lot of things, for people to vote their city. Berliners can vote for Berlin. People in Cairo can say, hey, come here. And based on the votes and, the logistics of everything, we go there for the second year, and then we move to the third year. And again, it also has a lot to do with the impact of the groups that we're working with, in the sense that our music program is designed to revive musical arts for the purpose of social change, kind of like a lot of the music that came out in the US in the 60s, which caused the end of the Vietnam War. essentially as a movement, as resistance to it. And so we want music to be impactful again, powerfully impactful, and in any genre that it is. And it could be that we find a lot of people are interacting with us and kind of coming to Compassiviste in Denmark more than anywhere else. Then, Denmark it is. We will definitely hold a space there and kind of go there. So we're very open to how we move around the space. We're not going to be fixed into Vegas, New York, London, Paris, and those are the big cities. Those are the big markets. It's not really like that. It's about where the passion is. We're going where the passion is.
Right. I can imagine that, in the new Vegas sphere that they have, where U2 is performing and all that stuff, the things that you could do with that, it's
exactly.
It's almost like a new medium that they've created in this.
That's you're exactly right there, and that is exactly what it is. It's being able to use that kind of new spaces and new tech to be able to really draw a global crowd. And for the first year, we chose that because, as you know, Vegas year-round has a huge tourist capacity, and it's no longer the days where it's just degenerative gambling space, but there's a lot going on there, from food to arts and shows, and people are enjoying all those things. So they're already in the mindset of listening to good music, from the pool parties to everything else, going to shows, hearing artists there, seeing paintings and galleries and everything else. So they're kind of like in that mindset. And then you have these things, kind of spurred up in front of you, and you're like, oh, I have to go. And then they go back to their hometown and say, we saw this really cool thing here. And it kind of like spreads the message through that airplane ride back home. And that was
no, it's a great place. I mean, they're basically the convention capital of the world. There's so many hotels. There's so many cheap flights. It's just easy for everyone to get to. Whereas, when you have something that's off in a country where, a lot of the people that want to go, it's going to cost them a lot more money to travel and to stay, then it's harder. So yeah, I think for your first year, getting that sort of venue where you're going to be able to maximize the amount of people really makes a lot of sense. And then you also have a book, The Adventures of Compassion, right, which was created to highlight sort of the core tenets of Compassiviste. Was that written sort of recently after all of this?
Yes, this was a very recent book. So I grew up. Tintin was my hero when I grew up. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tintin, but
are you kidding me? I have every Tintin book right there in my bookshelf.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
So
a lot of people my age and older, and mostly in Europe, know Tintin, but it didn't really grow into the US kind of like the main space like other things did. But so I grew up with Tintin, and to me, Tintin was this hero that went around the world. I mean, every book is in a different location in the series, and he solves crimes. And so he's going there in this compassion mindedness of helping society, so to speak. And I really love that idea of being, a global ambassador for compassion in a way. And he wasn't just resolving crimes, but he was also, being friendly to the native population of places that he went to, and understanding their cultures, and kind of like, showcasing a little bit of the connectivity of humans through his experiences. And so when I traveled a lot, I've traveled to 164 countries, and not like a layover, but when I say 164, I've stayed over a week at the minimum at any of these locations. So I love traveling. I really did travel a lot. And so when I look back at my life, and when I look back at the experiences I had in different places in the world, the book is a series of short stories of 50 stories at 50 different locations that a little bit of fiction and a little bit of nonfiction mixed together to bring the story to light. And from issues in the rainforest all the way to poverty in Hamburg, where I spent a lot of time as a child because my parents used to go there, And so different places around the world, different stories. And the bottom line of it all is we can change through the collective. We can always do better through the collective. You put a lot of people together, they have a mission. The mission is to progress to something better, and that mission can be achieved. And it doesn't really necessarily have to harm anybody. It's not like a violent social revolution where you're trying to overthrow a king or anything like that anymore. I think we're past that stage. I think we're in a place where we need to compassionately just all come together and make these decisions that make the world just a better place to live. And that's, the book and the stories in the book are just a collection. Speaking of Vegas, there's one story in there. When I went to Vegas, one of the times, I met somebody who's a local, and it was just by chance, and they showed me this place, the underground of Vegas. So in the underground, in the physical underground, where you have the sewers and everything else, people live there, and they're called the mole people. And there's a whole population there. Some of them work up, and I'm talking right under Caesar's Palace, right under the Strip. There are people living there, and you can go on YouTube and watch the videos of a lot of journalists who have gone into this place and kind of spoken with them and whatnot. And they're living in dire poverty. And some of them are veterans and whatnot, and they're living in dire poverty. And I saw this for the first time, and I thought, there are people literally about 30 feet above you playing $100,000 a hand on any given game, on craps or on roulette or on something. And you're down here, a complete population who, with 1 days of work here, you could really change your life. It could be a resolution, but it's not becoming a resolution, not because these people don't care at all, but it's because they most likely, the tourists don't have any education about what's happening. The locals don't. The corporations that don't care. But I think if the collective can voice that they should care, they will care, because it's a nominal amount for them. It doesn't matter. But we change when we are forced to change, not when we are given the luxury of caring to change. So that's what the book's about.
That is we're just approaching the end of the hour. And that is a wonderful way to wrap things up. You've talked about so much, but it's like at the end of the day, that's what the book is all about. So I'm sorry that we are going to have to wrap things up, but what a fascinating thing you've created, and what a fascinating journey you've been on. And so before we ask you to tell people where they can find out more about everything that you've spoken about, Craig, do you have any final questions?
Listen, this has been really enlightening, really an amazing discussion. I'm really interested in this movement. I think it's great. I'm really happy that someone has gone forward and done this. I think the world that we're in right now needs a lot more compassion. So it is really, really an important thing. And I think we all look forward to September 2025, I guess, when in Vegas, when you have this convention, and hopefully that is the spark that brings about some change. So thanks for coming on and talking to us about it.
Thank you very much. And and the thing is, really, it's a journey. Like Roland said, I'm not looking at this from a win or loss perspective. I'm just looking at this from, hey, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Maybe in my lifetime, the changes happen and I'm proud of what I did. And maybe 150 years later, the changes happen and I'll be proud of what I did then.
There's plenty to be proud of. So speaking about that, people have been listening to this. They want to find out more. Ali, where can they go to find out more about everything that you've been about?
Being Compassiviste is a unique word. We have the luxury of kind of owning it everywhere. So compassiviste.com and at Compassiviste everywhere on social media. Simple as that. You can find us there. Communicate, ask questions, drop a line, come to the Compassiviste website, go to the Compassiviste publishing tab, and throw us a line, ideas you have for a book. And we're very informal, so just talk to us. I'm not looking for the formalities that publishing houses want anything. I just want the story. Tell me the story. If it resonates, if it's good, we'll work on it.
Well, that sounds fantastic. So hopefully, if you are out there listening or watching on YouTube and you want to find out more, scroll down and we'll pop a link down in the description so you can go straight to the website Ali was talking about. And while you're down there, there's a big empty comment section. Why don't you leave Ali a comment and let him know how much you appreciated everything that he shared with us today and his passion and purpose. So definitely leave a comment there. Hit that like button while you're down there. There's also a subscribe button. There's even a bell icon. You can hit that and you'll be notified every time we have a new episode of Fully Booked out. And thank you so much, Ali. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Fully Booked. So until then, cheerio.